Its logic is one of disassembly, of the prepared and concretized form of subjects which the cognizing subject immediately faces at first. Their identity with the subject is untruth. And to take it back to the level of thingness, your wanting of that thing is what you should stop and question. That's untrue. You think it's the truth, is it? Is it what you really wanted? What if you got that commodity? What happens then? And this is one of the most fundamental experiences of the consumer culture. We have that initial moment of joy and whatnot, and then what replaces the joy? Usually profound frustration. We discover that this new toy is not what we really wanted and has these limitations. Maybe it's fun for a little while and it kind of fades away, and then we're back to square one. It wasn't really what we were looking for. We had the wish for something more, something unique and different, and then it turns out, well, no, that was just a part of what we wanted, and what we wanted was really more complicated than that. Their identity with a subject is untruth. That's a very profound and subtle diagnosis for the sort of internalized madness of all consumer cultures, not just American consumer culture these days. The transnational world system, there is a transnational consumerism running loose in the world system today, and this is an experience shared everywhere. It could be someone buying a cell phone in Jakarta, or someone buying a new television set in Moscow, or buying a new car in Rio de Janeiro. It'll be the same experience of thingness and contradiction and identity, and you think that's your identity because you've been sort of told this, and it's reiterated 1,000 times by the commercial media, and then you realize, well, no, actually, and you have to rethink that and stop and pause for a second. So, however, Adorno doesn't stop even here, and this is where I would argue that, in fact, most critiques of the consumer culture sort of stop there, this sort of moralistic moment where you have to make a decision. He's going to take this insight, this logic of disassembly, and he's going to think about it a little further. He's going to ponder, like, what kind of potential power does this logic have? What kind of agency does this give us? How can we use this to kind of question other aspects of our life? So he goes a little bit further. Through it, in other words, this false identity, the subjective preformation of the phenomenon slides in front of what is non-identical before the individuum ineffabile, which is a Latin, mispronouncing the Latin, ineffable individual. The summation of identical determinations would correspond to the fondest wish of traditional philosophy, to the a priori structure, and to its archaistic late form, ontology. And you have to understand, ontology is very much a code word here for sort of the 20th century irrationalistic right-wing reactionary movement going back to nature and blood and soil and German fascism and whatnot, and all kinds of reactionary, very nasty, atavistic throwbacks to previous modes of production, which are horribly violent and politically atrocious. So Adorno is making a very strong claim about politics here as well. He's reaching into that moment of the 20th century politics. However, he writes, the structure is, before every sort of specific content, in the simplest sense, negative, as something abstractly maintained. Spirit, and this is the Hegelian term of Geist, which is like mind, like the spirit isn't something, it's some concretized mental activity, subjectivity, like a consciousness that takes form and becomes a subject of world history and bends history to its will. And the Hegelian term is very slippery and complicated, but Adorno is sort of playing with the Hegelian notion. Spirit become compulsion. So the whole Hegelian notion is that, mind, Geist, spirit is this positive thing. It's the heroic entrepreneur, really. It's the ideology of, Napoleon on horseback, bending history's will. And then the critique of that, and the Marxian critique would be, no, you're not in control of anything. Even the entrepreneur is sort of the plaything of these objective compulsions and structures of accumulation that force them to do certain things. And they're not free subjects at all. And this mythology that you are free to make subjects turns into this horrible ideology of control. Because if you're a small social elite and you claim to have the world spirit on your side, well, you can crush anyone in your way. Like foolish peasants, you will let us run history or whatnot. So this ends up being a very violent ideology of domination. It can kind of shade into that very quickly. And so there's this complicity with violence that Adorno wants us to think about and to critique. The power of that negativity rules to this day in reality. What would be different has not yet begun. Think about that line. The power of that negativity rules to this day in reality. The fact that we're not free, we don't live in a free society, and that our ability to control our lives is very limited. What would be different has not yet begun. History's not yet begun. We're in a kind of a prehistory. We're in a prehistorical phase where human beings don't control their destiny. They don't understand themselves. They don't understand their society. They're not able to make good decisions or judgments about who they are or where they're going or what their talents really are or what they really want. And there's a whole complicated set of reasons for that. But Adorno brings it back to this message of, in a strange kind of way, this is profoundly hopeful. Because what he's saying is, social struggles haven't even started to begin. And all of human history has been this struggle with prehistory and scarcity and whatnot, and very dire in a lot of ways. But that which would be truly different and truly innovative and truly unique and truly free, we have a hard time imagining that because we're not there yet. We have to start to try to imagine that. We have to start to grasp this as what would that difference be that would truly be a new beginning, a break from the past, something truly liberating. And Adorno has, he'll qualify this later on and insist that we have to think of that in terms of aesthetics. We have to be very careful. It's just the assertion that something is new is not necessarily accurate. We need to think very carefully about the old and that which continues to exist, and about the structure of domination called the system of capitalism. Today it's transnational capitalism. We have to figure out what that thing is and how it operates and what its categories are. And then maybe we can start to identify moments of resistance, moments of pushback, moments of people seeking freedom and seeking a better life for themselves and their families and friends and their communities and so forth. Okay.